You don't have to be the aggressor in World of the Tanks, at least all of the time. And today's video in World of Tanks console is going to showcase the FE4202 and how you can play tanks two different ways within the game. And of course we're talking about getting assistance damage, and that is what today's video is primarily focused on. We'll be talking about the tank and the characteristics of the vehicle, but primarily about how you can increase your own spotting damage within World of Tanks, and that is ultimately what this kind of video is all about. And of course, if you have anything else to add, I highly implore you to go into the comment section and of course leave your own thoughts on how you kind of deal with getting increased spotting damage. Of course, it's super important if you're going for Marks of Excellence, and potentially I will be going for Marks of Excellence in the FE4202 if I have time. Let's get into the nitty gritty of spotting damage and how you can kind of get it in your own games, and also how you can not only just kind of rely upon getting actual damage, but also allowing yourself to get spotting damage, which in turn usually helps you get actual damage as well. So if you typically have an amazing spotting damage game, you typically have a little bit of actual damage, and most of that will have come from you being able to spot opponents. So what do you need to be able to have spotting damage? Now, I'm not gonna BS you. I'm not gonna sit here and say if you're in a Maus, you're gonna be able to get 5,000 spotting damage every game. Far from it. You're not going to be able to get 5,000 spotting damage in a Maus very often, if at all. So, of course, you have to have the right tank class. You have to have the right tank to be able to do it. Now, a lot of people think, oh, that means you have to have light tanks. No, absolutely not do you have to have light tanks. In fact, absolutely not do you have to have a light tank or a medium. And you know what? I think it's just dependent on what tank it is. There are only a few exceptions to which tanks can't spot within the game, at least effectively. And those are typically, like we've already mentioned, the Maus, things like the Type 5, things like the E100. These sort of super slow, super big, huge tanks are not going to be able to probably deal what you want within the game and get the spotting damage that you probably want. But what tanks can do it? Well, pretty much everything else. And yes, you have to have some caveat to that, which is that you need to have set up your tanks in a way that's going to enable you to actually get spotting damage. And the way that we do that in World of Tanks is using equipment, in using crew skills, and ultimately, I'm sorry to say, but you do have to have this stuff if you do want to make spotting damage 10 times easier, if not possible at all. So that's kind of what I always go with regards to trying to get spotting damage. And so you need to have the equipment, you need to have the crew skills, but you also need to realise that sometimes you can't get spotting damage. If you get Himmelsdorf, for example, you're not going to be able to get spotting damage. So, you know, use your brain a little bit, decide, you know what, maybe it's not actually possible for me to get some spotting damage on this map, so I'm not going to try and force it. But in maps like this, where you feel like you can get it, then yeah, of course, go for it. But the key thing I'm trying to showcase here in today's video is that I was thinking of being the aggressor. I wanted to get actual damage within this game, but it turned out maybe actually that isn't the best way of going about it. Maybe I was wrong in thinking I need to get damage in this game, and so we kind of turned towards the spotting. I mean, it's working so far. It appears as if I'm the only one that's actually spotting anyone on this mid-ridge, and so yes, we are kind of important in trying to get our team to get some actual damage and win the game. Now you see there I took a FE4005 hit, which, yeah, I know, it's a massive pain in the backside, but we've lost, what, like, I don't know, 55% of our hit points, 60% of our hit points. It's just like a little bit of a pain, but we can still go on. And a lot of people will be like so angry about the fact that they've just taken an FE4005 hit, or that they've been hit by Arty for 1,000 damage. But in the game, if you start getting really angry, you start making silly decisions, and yes, I know that's easier to say once you've kind of come out of it and, you know, that sort of thing, but the players that typically can keep cool and just take a hit and just carry on with their game as if nothing's actually happened, and just take the information that you've been hit and just kind of work around that, then yeah, those are the players that typically have the best games, have the best win rate. So if you can do that yourself, as much as you probably hate it, and I hate it as well, I hate being hit by artillery and losing half my health, but Sometimes you just have to accept it in the actual game itself if you want to do well, and not get annoyed and start YOLOing people for the sake of it. And half the time that just means that the player who's hit you has actually ruined your entire game, because then you YOLO someone, get taken out after dealing 0 damage to anyone after being hit. So that's kind of how I always view it. You can see here, even though in this game I'm thinking, you know what, this is terrible, I'm in a horrible spot. If I push over towards my heavies and the tank destroyer that are getting YOLO'd, it's not going to go well. So I'm just going to use the position that I've been in to spot the people on the ridge. Obviously we've got a few tank destroyers that are supporting, and if I'm not the one spotting for them, and if I am not the one that's actually going to be doing something to help out my team in that way, then I'm going to end up in the scenario where maybe I'm just being useless for my team. Now, we get spotted by the T-62A through the little kind of gap in between the bushes. I'm very scared that there's going to be the FE4005 poking over, and luckily he doesn't during that period of time. Maybe he was just aiming, I don't know. But we avoid the shell there. We have to be a bit careful from artillery in this game, because there you go, they always love coming over. We try and get a shot into the Progetto there, and we are still on 850 hit points, so there's nothing to really worry about in that regard. The one thing that we do have to worry about is these people YOLOing. Now, in the recorded voiceover that I actually did live during this, that I forgot to actually press record on, I was kind of mentioned previously that because of the tank destroyer and the heavy tank getting pushed by these enemies, that it's going to be a case of if I stay in this position where I'm currently in, that the team are going to lose on that flank, and then they are going to then move forward and try and get some shells of damage into us. Now, I could go for the shot on Centurion, and during the gameplay I decided not to, and you would have heard that, but unfortunately not in this game since the audio is not recorded. But I avoided actually shooting because I thought maybe my teammate will get a shell onto him, which they don't manage to do. Centurion then bounces off of me, which is pretty nice. He hits the turret, and then it's now a case of just trying to avoid the artillery shells from coming in and potentially taking half of our hit points, if not all of them, if he manages to somehow hit. Because remember, artillery doesn't even have to actually hit you to probably remove about 600 to 700, maybe even all of it if he hit right next to us, all of our hit points. Now, luckily the Centurion 7/1 gets taken out, and you can see here we've been kind of forced into this scenario where, yes, I really wanted to get damage at the beginning, but it just didn't work out. It was not possible for me to effectively get damage without, maybe getting like a couple of extra shots and then being taken out, which, granted, if that's what you're after, then yes, go ahead and do that. But if you're after trying to increase the chances of your team winning and actually come out with results like this, where you go from having like a pretty okay, like you wouldn't be angry at having like a 2,500 damage game, but if you could have a game where you've got just below 2,000 but also a ton of assistance, then surely that's the better game, and of course you feel a lot more rewarded by that. Now we shoot on the move at the Progetto using the good accuracy of the FE4202, and now it's just a time to actually go after this Conway. He's on low health. I actually decided to load the Hesh rounds because I want to take out the opponents. And then we go after the T92 and finish him off very nicely indeed. I absolutely love it when you finish off the artillery at the end of the game. But I've talked a lot in this gameplay. We've kind of showcased how you can do it, but let's just kind of do a quick recap, and I'm going to show you the equipment that I actually use on the FE4202, because ultimately I can tell you, I can show you, I can do all of this, but if you don't actually know the equipment, you're probably going to find it very difficult, and of course it does rely upon having those. So, equipment-wise, on the FE4202, I'm running advanced optics to get my vision range up, which helps massively, an extra 10% to your view range, which is gigantic, as well as running the crew skills that improve your vision as well. So all of those, you want every single one that's going to improve your chances of spotting people and remaining undetected on your medium tanks. I'm not saying on the FE4202 you have to use this, but in general. I've also then run ventilation. You could potentially swap this out for vertical stabilizers. You could run advanced concealment, whatever you really fancy. But for me, I just wanted the additional view range and all of the extras that come with ventilation, just generally on my medium tank. And then I went with advanced loader, which is just basically purely going after the damage per minute and being able to get that damage in a quick period of time, especially if you are in those games where you've only got a small amount of time or a small window where you can farm a ton of damage. So that's kind of what I was after with this build in the FV4 So hopefully that's given you an indication as to you don't always have to do the damaging role in the game. Sometimes it can be way more beneficial, like in that game that I've just showcased, to be the one that's spotting for your team. And I highly implore you guys that if you're in that scenario where you're feeling like you're just trying to like force getting actual damage, that maybe you should be getting some spotting damage and just taking advantage of some of the situations that arise in the game, like you saw there with our teammates sat in the central area being in TDs and just farming everyone that gets lit up by me personally. So yeah, it's really nice, and hopefully that showcases a spotting damage game, because we very rarely showcase like a variety of the spotting and actual damage games in World of Tanks. So yeah, hopefully that gave you a good indication that you can get both spotting and actual damage at the same time and have results where you're able to get 7,500 combined damage with only just under 2,000 actual damage. So thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions at all, leave them in the comment section down below. And don't forget, if you want me to focus on anything else within World of Tanks console, leave those in the comments as well. And I hope you did enjoy this video. I hope you join me in the next one, and I'll see you there. Goodbye.